The stars burned with cold brilliance across the viewport as Jin guided her research vessel through the debris field. This system, marked only as XC-47 on Confederacy charts, had been designated off-limits for generations. Not that anyone remembered. Why anymore? "You're too curious for your own good," her colleague Tay had warned before she left. But curiosity was exactly what made Jin the Confederacy's top xenoarchaeologist. Her ship's sensors pinged, detecting a structure amid the asteroid belt. Jin squinted at the readout. That was no natural formation. Banking sharply, she navigated around a spinning chunk of ice and rock, revealing her discovery, a small moon with a facility built into its cratered surface. "Incredible," she whispered, recording the coordinates. The structure showed no energy, signatures, no life signs, just cold metal and stone that had somehow survived thousands of years of cosmic bombardment. Jin landed her craft on a flat expanse near the facility's entrance. The moon's weak gravity made her movements bouncy as she approached in her environment suit. The airlock, designed for humanoid forms, cycled open with surprising ease. Inside, emergency lights flickered to life, responding to her presence after millennia of darkness. Jin swept her scanner across the walls, marveling at the preserved technology. The Confederacy taught that the Terrans were savage warriors who had nearly destroyed galactic civilization before being defeated. Yet these installations showed remarkable engineering skill. "What were you really like?" Jin wondered aloud, her voice echoing in the empty corridors. The central chamber contained rows of terminals surrounding a pedestal. Upon it sat a small metallic cube, covered in symbols Jin recognized from her studies. Ancient Terran script. She carefully brushed away the dust, revealing a handprint scanner. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Biometric security that's lasted all." This time, Jin's scanner indicated the device still contained power, impossible after so many centuries, unless the technology far exceeded Confederacy understanding. Without thinking, she pressed her six-fingered hand against the scanner. The device hummed, scanning her genetic structure before glowing red. A mechanical voice spoke in an ancient language Jin barely recognized from historical archives. "Non-human detected. Emergency protocol engaged." The cube split open, revealing a crystalline core that pulsed with blue light. Jin stepped back as it projected a holographic message, a human figure in what appeared to be military attire. "This is Admiral Sayo of Earth Defense Force. If you're viewing this message, our civilization faces extinction. The signal has been sent. The sleepers will awaken." Jin's heart raced. The history text never mentioned sleepers. Across the galaxy, in locations hidden from Confederacy charts, thousands of stasis chambers buried beneath planets, moons, and asteroids began powering up. Their occupants, human soldiers, scientists, and civilians, opened their eyes for the first time in over 3,000 years. On a remote outpost near the galactic rim, Commander Hyun gasped as his stasis pod opened. Military training kicked in immediately as he checked the facility's systems. All around him, 200 other pods were activating, their occupants stirring. "Status report," he barked to the AI system. "Emergency protocol activated. Threat level extreme. Awakening procedures at 82% completion across all facilities." Hyun nodded grimly. He remembered the day they'd entered stasis as if it were yesterday, the desperate gamble to save what remained of humanity after the war with the Confederacy reached a stalemate. "Wake the crew. Begin weapons check and ship preparation." In another sector, Captain June's eyes fluttered open as medical nanites cleared the stasis chemicals from her system. The massive battleship Thunderbolt hummed to life around her, hidden engines powering up for the first time in millennia. "Captain on deck," announced the ship's AI as June entered the bridge. Her crew, still groggy from stasis, snapped to attention. "Navigation." "Report," she ordered, settling into her command chair. "All systems operational, Captain, receiving coordinates from Central Command." June studied the tactical display. How many facilities are responding? Over 300 facilities reporting successful awakening sequences. Approximately 1.2 million human personnel now active. She nodded slowly. "And the alert?" "Originated from Sector 7, moon designation XC-47. On the Confederacy capital world, Elder Councillor Day shuffled urgently through the marble halls of the Senate. Unlike his younger colleagues, he had been taught the true history by his great-grandfather, one of the few who had negotiated with the humans. The Senate chambers fell silent as he entered, his expression grave. "Distinguished colleagues," he began, voice quavering with age and worry, "I bring grave news. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy signatures across the outer sectors." Supreme Councillor Wook scoffed. "Likely just stellar phenomena." "No," Day insisted. "I recognize these signatures. They are Terran warships activating." The chamber erupted in disbelief. "Impossible. The Terrans were defeated." Day shook his head. "No, they were never defeated. That's the secret our ancestors kept. When the war reached its bloodiest phase, with billions dead on both sides, the humans proposed a shocking solution. They would enter suspended animation, placing their entire species in stasis chambers hidden throughout the galaxy. "But why?" asked a younger councillor. "Because they saw what we couldn't, that greater threats existed beyond our galaxy. The humans turned themselves into a sleeping army, ready to awaken when needed. They became our silent guardians. And now they're waking up," whispered Wook, comprehension dawning. "Which means—" Day nodded grimly. "Something is coming. Something that frightened even the humans." As Jin stumbled back to her ship, the ancient facility behind her pulsed with energy, sending signals across the stars. She had no way of knowing she had just awakened the most feared species in galactic history, a race that had transformed itself into sleeping war deities, awaiting the day when the bell would toll. That day had come. Admiral Hana's eyes snapped, open with military precision, no trace of stasis fog clouding her thoughts. 3,000 years of suspended animation, yet her mind was razor-sharp. The emergency protocols had worked perfectly. She sat up in the chamber, flexing her fingers as medical nanites confirmed her vital signs were optimal. "Status report," she called out, her voice surprisingly strong. The command center's AI responded immediately. "Emergency awakening protocol activated 6 hours ago. Signal origin, Outpost XC-47. All systems operational. Fleet status, awakening." Hana swung her legs over the edge of the pod and stood, her muscles responding without the expected atrophy. The medical suite had maintained her body perfectly during the long sleep, ready for this moment. "Show me the galaxy map," she ordered. A holographic display materialized before her, showing thousands of blinking blue lights scattered across the spiral arms, each representing a human stasis facility coming online. The Milky Way looked different than she remembered. Stellar drift had altered familiar constellations over the millennia. "How many awake so far?" she asked, studying the tactical display. "Approximately 42% of military personnel have completed awakening procedures. Civilian awakening protocols on standby pending your authorization." Hana nodded. "Keep civilians in stasis for now. We need to assess the threat level first." She dressed quickly in her uniform, the fabric adjusting to her form. The Admiral's insignia gleamed against the deep blue material. As she stepped into the command center, 5 other officers were already at their stations, having awakened minutes before her. "Admiral on deck," announced her second-in-command, Jun. "At ease," Hana replied. "Begin Operation Lazarus. Full military awakening across all sectors. I want the fleet assembled at these coordinates within 72 hours. Jun nodded, transmitting the orders through the quantum communication network that had lain dormant for centuries. "What triggered the signal, Admiral?" Hana's expression darkened. "Unknown. But the fail-safes wouldn't activate without a Class 1 threat." She remembered the day they had entered stasis, Earth in ruins, humanity scattered across colonies, the bitter war with the alien Confederacy at a stalemate. The discovery of something worse approaching from intergalactic space had changed everything. The desperate gamble, to fake surrender, hide their forces throughout the galaxy and sleep until they were needed. "Activate the Sentinel probes," Hana ordered. "I want eyes beyond the galactic rim." Across the hidden base, massive hangar doors slid open for the first time in millennia, revealing rows of sleek warships. Engineers and pilots rushed to prepare them, muscle memory guiding their actions despite the passage of time. On the Confederacy capital world of Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Senate had devolved into chaos. Representatives from 116 species shouted over each other as sensor data streamed in. "Silence!" boomed Supreme Counselor Wook, his tentacled appendages waving for order. "We must approach this systematically." The chamber quieted, reluctantly. At the central podium, the Minister of Defense, a reptilian Sarkhan named Krill, manipulated the holographic display. "As you can see, we've detected unusual energy signatures in sectors previously thought abandoned. Our analysis suggests thousands of power sources activating simultaneously across the galaxy." "Pirates?" suggested a delegate from the Outer Rim. "No, pirate fleet could be this coordinated," Krill replied. "The energy signatures match no known technology in our database." From the back of the chamber, Councillor Day stood slowly, his ancient body trembling with the effort. At over 400 years old, he was the eldest member of the Senate, his species known for their longevity and perfect memory. "I know what this is," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying throughout the hall. The chamber fell, silent as all eyes turned to him. "The humans have awakened." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. The Terran War was ancient history, a cautionary tale told to children about the dangers of unchecked aggression. "Impossible," scoffed Wook. "The humans were defeated 3,000 years ago." Day shuffled toward the central platform, each step deliberate. "No, they were never defeated. That's the lie we've told ourselves for generations." He reached the platform and placed his hand on the scanner. The system recognized his high-level clearance, unlocking classified files that had been sealed for millennia. "I am the last living being who participated in the peace negotiations with Earth," Day continued. "What you know as their surrender was actually a pact, the most unusual agreement in galactic history." The holographic display changed, showing footage of human representatives meeting with younger versions of Day and other long-dead Confederacy officials. They came to us with a warning. Something was approaching from beyond our galaxy, something that had destroyed other civilizations. The humans proposed to become our defenders. They would place their entire species in stasis, hidden throughout the galaxy, ready to awaken when the threat arrived. Stunned silence gripped the chamber. "Why would we agree to this?" demanded a senator from the inner worlds. "Because they proved what was coming," Day replied grimly. "And because we had no choice. Even at the height of the war, we couldn't defeat them. We could only fight to a stalemate." He manipulated the controls, bringing up ancient battle footage showing human warships cutting through Confederacy defenses. With devastating efficiency. Now they're awakening, all of them, which means the threat they warned us about has arrived. Aboard her flagship Invictus, Admiral Hana watched as the massive vessel detached from its hiding place within an asteroid. All around her, similar warships emerged from concealment, some rising from ocean depths, others breaking free from mountain ranges, each protected by sophisticated cloaking technology that had kept them hidden for 3 millennia. "Fleet status?" she asked, settling into her command chair. 60% of vessels reporting ready, Admiral." "Estimated time to full deployment, 18 hours. Hana nodded, studying the tactical display. Thousands of ships were converging from across the galaxy, each crewed by humans who had sacrificed everything for this moment. "Long-range scans?" she asked. June's expression tightened. "Sentinel probes confirm. Massive object cluster approaching. From intergalactic space. Estimated arrival at galactic boundary, 6 days." Hana stared at the grainy images of the approaching threat, a swarm of massive objects moving with clear purpose. "It's time," she said quietly. "Send a message to the Confederacy Senate. Tell them the war deities have awakened and we need to talk." The Confederacy battlecruiser Eternal Vigilance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus system, its massive engines glowing blue against the void. Captain Tool, a 6-limbed Varaxian, nervously adjusted his ceremonial collar as the ship's scanners detected the approaching vessel. "Unknown craft at bearing 273, reported his sensor officer. "Configuration matches no known design." Tool watched the viewscreen as the mysterious ship grew larger. Its hull was midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting light, making it seem like a hole in space itself. No visible weapons protruded from its sleek surface, yet the captain felt an instinctive dread. "Open communications," he ordered, his voice wavering slightly. Before his communications officer could comply, the alien vessel transmitted on all frequencies. "Confederacy vessel. This is Admiral Hana of the Earth Defense Force. We request diplomatic escort to Nexus Prime. We come under banner of peace." A collective gasp swept through the bridge. Humans were creatures of myth, bogeymen used to frighten, disobedient children. Yet here they were speaking perfect standard. "Acknowledged," Tool responded after a moment's hesitation. "Follow our vector. Deviate and our defense grid will open fire." A soft chuckle came through the speakers. "Your defense grid would barely scratch our paint, Captain, but we'll follow your lead. Hana out." The journey to Nexus Prime took 6 hours, during which Tool sent urgent messages ahead. By the time they reached the capital world's orbit, the entire planetary security force was on high alert. The Senate had convened an emergency session, and crowds gathered in the streets, watching public view screens as the mysterious human vessel approached. The landing platform at the Senate spire had been cleared of all traffic except for a heavily armed honor guard. Supreme Councillor Wook stood at the front, flanked by Councillor Day and 12 other senior officials, all trying to project calm they didn't feel. "Remember," Day whispered to Wook, "show respect but not fear. The humans value strength." The human ship, now identified as the Shadowblade, settled onto the platform with barely a sound, its landing systems far more advanced than anything the Confederacy possessed. A ramp extended, and for a moment nothing happened. Then they appeared. Admiral. Hana led the procession, her uniform a deep blue with silver accents that caught the light of Nexus Prime's twin suns. She walked with perfect military precision, back straight, head high. Behind her came 5 other humans, 3 male, 2 female, each wearing different colored uniforms, denoting various branches of their military. Whispers swept through the crowd. The humans looked so ordinary yet so alien at the same time. Their movements were fluid and purposeful, their eyes constantly scanning, assessing. Predators among prey. "Supreme Councillor," Hana said, stopping precisely 3 paces from Wook. "Thank you for receiving us." Wook's translator processed her words perfectly. Another surprise. "Admiral Hana, your appearance has caused quite a stir in the Confederacy." "I imagine so," she replied with a small smile. "Your ancestors did an excellent job of erasing us from history." Dai stepped forward. "Not erasing, Admiral. Protecting. As was agreed." Hana's eyes fell on the ancient counselor, her expression softening slightly. "You were there." "I was," Day confirmed. "Though much younger, I am honored that the pact has held." The delegation moved inside the Senate chamber, where representatives from all Confederacy worlds waited in tense silence. As the humans entered, many senators instinctively leaned back in their seats. Admiral Hana took the central speaking platform, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber. 3,000 years ago, as our war reached its bloodiest phase, we discovered a threat approaching from beyond the galactic rim, a force that had already destroyed 17 advanced civilizations in neighboring galaxies. We brought this evidence to your leaders. She activated the holographic display, showing ancient footage of massive crystalline structures moving through intergalactic space. We proposed a solution. Humanity would enter stasis, hiding our forces throughout the galaxy. We would sleep until the threat arrived, becoming your defenders when needed. In return, the Confederacy would maintain watch and safeguard our sleeping population. A senator from the Outer Rim stood. "Why should we believe this fantasy? For all we know, you've been hiding, building forces to conquer us." Hana's expression didn't change. "If conquest were our goal, Senator, I wouldn't be standing here talking. I would be accepting your surrender after our fleet reduced your homeworld to ash." The chamber fell silent. "We kept our word," she continued. "For 3 millennia we slept. Now something has triggered our awakening protocols. The threat we warned about has arrived." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The main display switched to a live feed from deep space monitoring, stations at the galactic edge. The image showed hundreds, perhaps thousands of massive objects moving in perfect formation. Each was larger than the largest Confederacy dreadnought, their surfaces glittering with an unnatural light. 17 days ago, Hannah explained, your scientist Jin activated an ancient warning beacon on Moon XC-47. It was placed there to detect the unique energy signature of the approaching force we call the Harvesters. Counselor Wook stared at the screen in horror. What do they want? The same thing they wanted from the 17 civilizations they've already destroyed, Hannah replied grimly. Everything. They consume all, resources, technology, knowledge. They process entire populations for information extraction before discarding the remains. The chamber erupted in panic. Representatives shouted questions and demands as the reality of the situation sank in. Silence, Day called, his ancient voice carrying surprising authority. When the chamber quieted, he turned to Hannah. What do you propose, Admiral? Hannah's eyes swept the assembled representatives. The Confederacy's military forces are impressive for peacetime, but woefully inadequate against this threat. Humanity has spent millennia preparing for this exact moment. Our forces are awakening and assembling. We offer an alliance. Our military might, combined with your resources and knowledge of the current galaxy. She paused, letting her words sink. We were once enemies. Now we must stand together or separately we will fall. The war deities have awakened, and we've come to honor our ancient promise. The mining colony of New Horizon received no warning before the sky turned black. Massive ships, each the size of a small moon, descended through the atmosphere, their crystalline structures refracting the planet's sunlight into eerie prismatic patterns. Colony Administrator Tech watched in horror from the command center as strange pods rained down across the settlement. Emergency protocols, he shouted, activating the colony's meager defenses. Get everyone to the shelters. The defense grid powered up, automatic turrets tracking the falling objects. Lasers fired, scoring direct hits on several pods, but the beams simply dissipated across their surfaces without effect. The first pod struck ground near the central plaza. Rather than exploding, it unfolded like a grotesque flower, revealing its contents, a swarm of metallic creatures with too many limbs. They moved with horrifying speed, neither fully mechanical nor biological, but something in between. Tech grabbed the emergency transmitter. This is New Horizon. We are under attack by unknown forces. Requesting immediate, his message cut short as the command center's doors buckled inward. The last thing New Horizon broadcast to the Confederacy was Tech's scream, the emergency. Session of the Galactic Senate had stretched into its 14th hour when the reports began flooding in. Senator after senator received desperate messages from their homeworlds about attacks on outlying colonies and stations. 7 outer systems have gone dark, announced the defense minister, her holographic display showing red dots spreading across the galactic map. The pattern suggests a coordinated, multi-pronged assault. Admiral Hannah stood calmly at the center of the storm, studying the tactical display with practiced eyes. They're testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. This is just the beginning. Supreme Counselor Wook paced nervously. Our fleet is mobilizing, but they're scattered across too wide an area. We can't defend every system simultaneously. You don't need to, Hannah replied. Give me command authority over Confederacy forces. I'll coordinate with our human fleet to establish a defensive perimeter. The chamber erupted in protests. A Kilvari senator jumped to his feet, mandibles clicking. Angrily, absolutely not. How do we know this isn't some human plot? For all we know, you arranged this invasion as an excuse to seize control. Hannah's eyes narrowed. With respect, Senator, if we wanted control, we wouldn't need an excuse. Before the argument could escalate, the chamber doors burst open. Jin rushed in, breathless, flanked by security officers who had failed to stop her. They're here, she shouted. I've seen them. All eyes turned to the disheveled xenoarchaeologist. Her clothes were torn, her face smudged with dirt and blood. I was on research vessel Curiosity when they attacked the Helios outpost, she continued, her voice shaking. These things, they aren't just destroying, they're harvesting, taking people, technology, even stripping minerals from the ground. Jin activated her personal data device, projecting footage onto the main display. The Senate watched in horrified silence as metallic creatures systematically dismantled an entire settlement, capturing colonists in energy fields before dragging them to processing centers that had been rapidly constructed from the colony's own materials. "The Voidborn," Hana whispered. "Just as our records described." Councillor Day stepped forward, his ancient face solemn. "I move to grant Admiral Hana emergency command authority over all Confederacy military assets." "Seconded," said Wook, surprising. "Everyone." The vote was swift and nearly unanimous. Aboard the Shadowblade, now converted into a mobile command center, Hana studied the latest tactical data. Jin sat nearby, providing information about Confederacy worlds and their defenses. "The Voidborn ships move faster than anything in your fleet," Hana explained to the assembled Confederacy captains, both physically present and attending via hologram. "But they follow predictable attack patterns. They target communication arrays first, then power generation, then defense systems." "How do you know this?" asked Captain Toole, skepticism evident in his voice. "Because we've fought them before," replied Jun, Hana's second-in-command. 3,000 years ago we detected their scout ships. We tracked them back to their point of origin and engaged in limited combat before they retreated. Hana nodded. "That encounter made us realize we needed to prepare for their eventual return in force. It's why we entered the Stasis Pact." Jin leaned forward, studying the display showing the invasion pattern. "They're avoiding these sectors," she noted, pointing to areas that seemed randomly distributed throughout the galaxy. Hana smiled grimly. "Those are sectors where our major fleet assets were hidden. They remember us from our last encounter. They fear humans." "Which explains why they waited until now," Jun added. "Our awakening protocols were set to trigger automatically if they were detected. They've been watching, waiting for a time when they thought we were gone or forgotten." "And I accidentally rang the dinner bell," Jin said quietly. Hana placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, you rang the alarm that woke us. Without that, they would have consumed half the galaxy before anyone understood the threat." The tactical display suddenly flashed with new alerts. A massive Voidborn fleet had appeared near the Traxxas system, home to over 4 billion Confederacy citizens. "They're targeting population centers now," Hana said. "Captain Toole, take your battle group and evacuate as many civilians as possible. Don't engage the enemy directly." "Run away?" Toole asked incredulously. "My warriors are prepared to die defending. Your ships will be destroyed in minutes," Hana cut him off, "and your deaths will serve no purpose. Evacuate the civilians to these coordinates." She transmitted data showing a previously unknown space station hidden in an asteroid field. "That's a human facility," Jun explained, "designed to shelter millions. We have hundreds like it throughout the galaxy." Across the command center, communication officers coordinated as human warships emerged from hiding places all across the galaxy. Ancient engines that had lain dormant for millennia roared to life. Weapon systems more advanced than anything the Confederacy possessed powered up. "How many ships do you have?" asked Jin, watching the display in awe. "Not enough for a conventional war," Hana admitted. "But we don't fight conventionally." She turned to the assembled officers. "The Voidborn expect the Confederacy's disorganized defense. They don't know that humanity has awakened. We'll use that surprise to coordinate a trap at these key strategic points." The display highlighted several systems. "We've spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment," Hana said, her voice steady and confident. "While we slept, our AI system studied every possible scenario. We have weapons specifically designed to target Voidborn weaknesses." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each officer. "Today, the galaxy learns why humans were once feared across the stars, and why we chose to become its guardians, instead of its conquerors." The space around the galactic core shimmered with the energy discharges of 1,000 battles. Massive Voidborn vessels, crystalline structures that defied conventional physics, moved in perfect formation, their weapons slicing through the remnants of the Confederacy's once proud fleet. Debris from destroyed ships formed an ever-expanding cloud around the battlefield. From his observation post aboard the Confederacy command carrier, Captain Toole watched with growing despair. 3 weeks of brutal combat had pushed their forces back to this final defensive line. Behind them, lay the most populated sectors of the galaxy, trillions of lives depending on their increasingly futile stand. "Where are the humans?" whispered a young officer beside him. Admiral Hana promised reinforcements. As if in answer, the tactical display lit up with new signatures. Hundreds of jump points opened simultaneously around the battlefield, a maneuver considered impossible by Confederacy scientists. Human warships poured through, their black hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. At the center of the formation, the massive human flagship Shadowblade emerged, dwarfing even the largest Confederacy vessels. Its hull bristled with weapons unlike anything Tool had ever seen. "This is Admiral Hana to all Confederacy vessels," came the transmission. "Fall back to defensive position Omega. I repeat, clear the engagement zone immediately." Tool hesitated only briefly before giving the order. "All ships execute emergency. Jump to position Omega. Now." As the Confederacy fleet retreated, the human vessels formed a perfect sphere around the advancing Voidborn armada. Tool watched in amazement as the human ships synchronized their movements with impossible precision. Aboard the Shadowblade, Hana stood calmly at the center of the command deck, her eyes closed as the neural interface connected her directly to the battle network. Through this system, she controlled not just her flagship but coordinated the entire human fleet as extensions of her own body. "Phase 1 initiated," she announced, her voice eerily calm. "Targeting systems locked. Dimensional. Anchors deployed." Around the battlefield, smaller human vessels launched specialized devices that created localized distortions in spacetime. The Voidborn ships, suddenly unable to utilize their faster-than-light capabilities, found themselves trapped. "They're trying to communicate," reported Jun from his station. "Standard intimidation protocol, offering to spare select populations in exchange for surrender." Hana's lips curled in a cold smile. "No deals with harvesters. Execute Phase 2. Across the human fleet, weapon ports opened simultaneously, but instead of firing, they projected focused beams of coherent energy that intersected at precise points throughout the enemy formation. Where the beams met, space itself seemed to fold inward. The Voidborn ships fired back, their crystalline weapons lashing out with devastating power. Several human vessels were hit directly, their hulls absorbing incredible amounts of energy before finally buckling. Yet for each human ship destroyed, their formation adjusted instantly, maintaining the perfect geometric pattern. "Sacrificial units performing as expected," Jun reported. "Energy absorption at 93% capacity." On the Confederacy observation vessels, aliens of 100 different species watched in stunned silence. The human battle strategy made no sense by conventional military doctrine until suddenly it did. The energy absorbed from Voidborn weapons was being channeled through the human fleet network, amplified, and redirected into the intersection points of their energy beams. These points began to glow with increasing brightness. "Phase 3, ordered Hana, opening her eyes. "Singularity collapse in 3, 2, 1. The energy nodes imploded, creating miniature black holes throughout the Voidborn formation. The artificial gravity wells tore through enemy vessels, shredding their crystalline structures and pulling the fragments into oblivion. The largest Voidborn command ship attempted to escape, its engines pushing against the fabric of spacetime itself. Hana directed the Shadowblade in pursuit, the massive human flagship accelerating to impossible speeds. "Direct neural interface engaged," she announced, as helmet-like apparatus descended over her head. "Full combat mode." The Shadowblade moved as an extension of Hana's will, anticipating the enemy's maneuvers before they occurred. It danced through debris fields that should have been impassable, firing precisely calculated shots that targeted structural weaknesses in the Voidborn vessel. In a final desperate move, the Voidborn ship turned and accelerated directly toward the densely populated Nexus system, hoping to use civilians as shields. "Not happening," Hana whispered. The Shadowblade fired its main weapon, a concentrated beam of what appeared to be pure darkness. Where it struck the Voidborn vessel, matter simply ceased to exist, carved away layer by layer until nothing remained. Within hours, it was over. The Voidborn armada, The threat that had destroyed 17 civilizations before reaching the Milky Way had been utterly annihilated. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Senate convened in special session. The chamber, partially rebuilt after void-borne attacks on the capital, was filled beyond capacity. At the center stood Admiral Hannah, her uniform bearing the marks of battle. "The immediate threat has been eliminated," she reported to the assembled representatives. "Our forces are hunting down the remaining void-borne scouts, but the main invasion force has been destroyed." Murmurs of relief swept through the chamber. Supreme Counselor Wook stepped forward. "Admiral, the Confederacy owes humanity a debt we can never repay. But now we face a new question. What happens to your people? Will you reclaim your former territories, establish a separate government?" The question hung in the air. Many senators shifted nervously, remembering ancient histories of human aggression. Hannah smiled slightly. 3,000 years ago, humanity made a choice to become guardians rather than conquerors. We see no reason to change that now. She activated the holographic display, showing a plan for defensive stations positioned around the galaxy's perimeter. "We propose to establish a protective network, early warning systems and rapid response bases that can detect and intercept threats before they reach populated systems. Some of our people will remain awake to train Confederacy forces in advanced defensive techniques. And the rest?" asked Jin, who had been granted special observer status in recognition of her role. "The rest will return to stasis," Hannah replied. "Our combat-optimized biology makes us uncomfortable in peacetime, but we'll be ready when needed again." Counselor Day nodded slowly. "The sleeping gods, ready to awaken when the bell tolls." "Not gods," Hannah corrected gently. "Just people who found their purpose. We were made for war, but we choose to fight only in defense of life." The Senate voted unanimously to accept the human proposal. In the months that followed, human warships were converted to defensive platforms. Training academies were established where Confederacy officers learned from human instructors. And one by one, most humans returned to their stasis chambers, choosing the long sleep over a peace they had never really known. On the observation deck of the Shadowblade, Hannah and Jin watched the stars together one last time. "Will you miss being awake?" Jin asked. Hannah considered the question. "I was born for battle, engineered for war. Peace is strange to me, but beautiful in its way. When will you wake again?" "When we're needed," Hannah said simply. "Whether that's in 100 years or another 1,000. As Jin departed, Hannah took one last look at the galaxy her people had saved, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Then she turned and walked toward her stasis chamber, ready to dream until the next. Bell rang. The end.